the origin for me anyways has always been a reciprocal relationship between us as, say, supposedly the helper, and then the people in Uganda supposedly being the ones being helped. But in my case, it was very clearly a situation where I was being helped, or there was a benefit to me that was equal to, if not greater than, the benefit to anybody in Uganda. So the idea of one for another, it doesn't matter who's giving and who's receiving. It's that there is a beauty and there's health and well-being when there's a reciprocity, and it's not a one-way street.
Welcome to the Unblock Yourself podcast, where we sit down with people who are chasing their dreams and bringing them to life. Today, we're chatting with Glenn Pascoe. Glenn is the founder of an organization called One for Another that serves children with surgical needs in Uganda. Medical care is not free in Uganda. Children who are born with or maybe acquire a surgical condition are at risk because the cost to correct their condition is beyond what most families can afford. When Glenn first started this work, it was really only to help just 6 children. He could have never imagined that he would start an organization that has now built a hospital in Uganda, and 12 years later, they served over 3,500 young children in life-altering and, in some cases, life-saving surgeries. Glenn's story isn't one of a hero who went to another part of the world to save young children. It's really about the challenges he himself was facing in his own life and how doing this work helped him so much. Glenn's story is incredibly humbling, and it's guaranteed to move something inside of you. And if it doesn't, you maybe weren't paying close enough attention. So we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Glenn.
I think that Whitney and I we strive to be really empathetic people, open-minded, but I think you have to be reminded sometimes of the privilege that you have in order to just be grateful and have this deep empathy. And preparing for this conversation has just put us into I think a great mindset, because it's the work that you do is really humbling to people that live with such privilege and the people who you impact. And so this could be hours long, I think, is the point of what I'm saying, because there's so much to dig into.
Yeah, great.
The kids were fussing about having to do some dishes after watching a video testimonial that had shared, and I lost my complete shit. I don't even know how.
Yeah, they're like, "Who are you interviewing today?" And I'm like, "Oh, like his name's Glenn, and this is the work he does." And I was showing them, and then so right after then,
Yeah, the kids over here are always very receptive when I tell them that in Africa things are different. They really love hearing that. I'm actually kidding.
I'm sure. I am sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a bit of a personal connection to One for Another, and my son's been playing hockey for years, and there's always fundraising and different things that we're doing. And it was a couple of years ago now, but we ran a fundraiser. It was called the 18th Man or the 18th Player, and it was through your organization. But it was it was really cool. So we raised money to help a family pay for their son's surgery in Uganda, and it was awesome. Like, I think we sent a jersey, and he was always kind of like part of the team, and they'd share pictures back and on the progress and the surgery. So it was incredible. Like, I think to this day, it's still one of the most impactful, like memorable fundraising things that the team had done.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, that was an initiative that's really took off in many ways and caught me by surprise as its effectiveness, and also just the beauty of engaging kids here and helping kids over there, like, together.
Yeah, I agree. For them to have that context, again, we're, very privileged. And so for them to be able to make those connections kind of across the world, literally, it was really neat. So that's a program that's still running?
Yeah. It's we call it the number one draft pick now, because we have teams of all sorts, like not just hockey, and also not just boys. So, one number one draft pick, whether it's a boys or girls team or any team.
Well, I think that connection, I remember Cole knowing the name of the person who is supporting and helping, and having these visual reminders, I think made it
Mhm.
personal and impactful in a
Mhm.
way that was meaningful. And I think we're talking about it a little bit, but I think let's just get right into it. So, One for Another is the organization. Just tell us what the organization is, the mission you're on, and of course your role in it, Glenn.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I originally got a love for Africa in 1996, so it has to start there because that was the summer of my second year of university, and I went with a family friend, Danny Heho, to Malawi, which is also East Africa. And at the time, um, I was in the middle of an undergraduate degree and didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. But that trip um unearthed this deep um, feeling of love and just feeling at home in a place that was totally foreign. All of my sensibilities were sort of awakened over there. And so I didn't know what I was doing per se, but I loved the experience. And from that, went on to change my major and was going to be a Bible school teacher in Malawi that from that experience. Um, so I came back and did a biblical studies degree and then went to a seminary based on that experience. But life has a way of changing, not going in the way that you thought. So I got married, and it ended up that I shifted into chaplaincy work in a hospital instead of pursuing that. So still used my my education, but it shifted a bit just due to life. So I'll give you some context just because it might help show that although life doesn't go the way you perhaps want it to or expect it to, it can turn out remarkably close to what you always dreamed of. In 2009, my marriage fell apart out of the blue, and so I I struggled after that to make sense of my life and the trajectory I was on. And one of the ways that I decided to try to sort myself out was to go back to Africa because I hadn't been able to go back ever since that experience. So, and just wanted to test the waters and see, is that love still there? Do I still think that maybe there's a role for being in Africa in my life? And so that was 2011 then that I went with a friend who does volunteer trips there. He has an organization locally that helps people get to Uganda in particular. It's an English speaking country, so that helps. Um, and that from that experience, I decided I would take a leave from work. I was working at the House of Friendship, and from that initial trip, I thought I'll take a leave for 3 months and really dive in and see if this is something that I would like to pursue. Now, at the same time, and hopefully this doesn't just get kind of long and convoluted, but in the wake of the divorce, I entered into a profound depression and couldn't actually go to work anymore. And so I went on a leave, and that opened up a door to go to Uganda for a longer period, even though maybe it wasn't advisable. Um, and and being there did help bring me back to some grounding emotionally, and got was able to come back and actually continued working part-time for a while at House of Friendship. But it was during that 3 month stint that I I I had parents bring their some of their kids to me and say, my child has a hernia, my child has a broken leg, or whatever the situation was. Can you help me? And not being a doctor, not being a medical person, I said I can't help, but let's go to the clinic and see what they would say. What's how would you get it fixed? And through that, found that for a relatively small amount of money, a child could be treated, and have their conditions treated for so that the rest of their life was considerably altered in a positive way. So, say for $250 or $500, something that would have limited them for their life could be corrected. And so that's how that's how it started.
Wow. Just even you saying, the surgery that could be life changing for them is $250, which of course, well, it's not a small amount of money, but it's a small amount of money to a lot of people, that are as privileged as we are. And so, yeah, that's just incredible. It's a lot of money to them, right? And they can't afford that care for their children.
Yeah, I felt the same. I remember having an experience once where I went to a guy's golf weekend. We do this in the fall, and I remember going, and golf costs quite a bit of money, especially if it's at one of these nicer places. And I remember coming away from that weekend thinking like I could have sponsored, a kid's surgery for the cost of some horrific golf games. So yeah, that's where I started thinking, maybe this isn't such a bad model for an organization would be to say, if you want to help this particular child, it's going to cost this much money, because most of us, do things and spend money on stuff that probably isn't as significant as that. So
Glenn, was it your sister who was there with you at that time?
yeah,
Okay, so you're there with your sister, and you're approached. I mean, you just step outside of what would have been your comfort zone completely and say, okay, I'll see if we can help these kids. But then something stuck for you, clearly, that it just, you couldn't let that go. I think lots of people travel and get inspired and, oh, I want to move there one day or I want to change. And then we just go back into what can you think of what it was that stuck?
yeah, I've had that experience too, where I've gone places and come back and thought, oh, I'm gonna do such and such, and then 3 weeks later, it's faded. But my situation in the Africa, for anyone who's been, is a very it has a power there. It's very compelling. The place and the people are not easily forgotten. That's one thing. The needs are not easily forgotten. But I would say the timing in my life, I also needed it in a way. I'm not sure how, Africa may have needed me a little bit, but I needed it more for my well being. So it was a time in life where it was something that I need to grab onto. And my sister, Wendy, was the one who moved it forward. She was the one who said, "You love it there. I can see you do much better there, health wise. Why don't we try to keep at least something going from what we've experienced there?" And so, even if it's having a garage sale every once in a while, raising a little bit of money and working on one child, there was no thought of becoming an organization or having a future for that matter. It just was, why don't we keep doing this, because it brings you and brings us joy and a sense of meaning. And so one step led to another, and that's the story of our beginning, is that at every step I kind of resisted the responsibilities of, say, having an organization or becoming a charity. But at each step you realize, okay, well, if we're going to go to the next step, we need to get X done. getting charitable status was a big one, because then you can give receipts to people, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, actually, I was reflecting on that. It seems very complex to start up an organization in a different country. It's a like completely different medical system. How did you do that?
Starting an organization at the beginning seems kind of complicated, because there's a bunch of stuff that you've never done before, and now you're about to do them, and you're the only person doing them. I'm not a bookkeeper, but I have a handle on the books. I'm not technical, but each of the building blocks of an organization, like a website, social media, and some sort of database, and then oodles and oodles of spreadsheets, like you cobble it together and you figure it out, and over time you can make it, somewhat professional. But over that length of time, you're right, a lot of very challenging things happen. COVID was a dark time
Hmm.
for everyone, but not just COVID, but economic times in general. Like I would even say now, where it's still, we're also, things are uncertain. You can't predict, and you don't always know whether, if it was going great 3 years ago, you don't know how it's going to go next year. And in charity work, you you have repeat donors and a donor base, but it's not it is contingent upon the economics of the times. So once I develop a little bit of faith in the cycles, I can get through drier times easier, but I still worry at night and wonder, how are we going to pay for stuff? But it'll come out of that, just like it has every other year.
And it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on the balance that you had when you were still with House of Friendship and building this. Like, this wasn't an overnight success story. Your side hustle was building an organization that was, in some cases, saving children's lives, changing lives in another part of the world. So, assuming it would have been easier just to stay at House of Friendship, but you chose to go and do this full time. Like, what led to that decision, or what got you to that point where this became a full time position?
Yeah. So when, as I said, when I started, I was always just sort of taking the next logical step, and so you work that into your life, and then as the organization got bigger, I was realizing that my day job, was really getting in the way of, like, getting stuff done, and like being able to get organized with the size that One for Another was becoming. So something had to give, and so House of Friendship was gracious in letting me go down in hours, and then over time, and then I think went full time maybe around 2018 or 17, something somewhere in there. So one went down and the other started coming up, and you need a bit of footing underneath you, like financially, obviously. Like you can't just step off the cliff. So I had a support team that allowed me to do that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Um, so these first six children that you helped, are you still connected to them? Or
Yeah,
do you keep in touch
yeah.
with, you are? Neat. And I can't imagine they're children anymore.
No, they're not. That's the thing. We had a 10-year anniversary gathering at the hospital a couple of years ago, and many of them came. And we still, in fact, I was just there in June, and Willie, one of our kids uh, from from those early days, he comes every time I visit, and he checks in with me and updates me on how he's doing. So many of them stay in touch. Not all. Life in Uganda is complicated. Um, People move away. Economics are hard, but a lot of the kids stay in touch. And like this boy Willie, we worked on him when I think he was 10, and now he's like 22, so he's like a grown man.
Wow.
Yeah, he's an electrician. He has a job. We helped him a bit with school. We found him because he was on the front page of the national newspaper in Uganda, with a terrible picture of him with his intestines prolapsed out of a colostomy on his side. And the caption read, boy being eaten by rats at night, and that was due to having an unmanaged colostomy because he had a condition where he couldn't pass stool regularly. We followed up with the person who was doing that news report, because we were struck by it, and you can see how the work kind of grips you, and you just go with it because, like, what else are you gonna do? This is not difficult work to be motivated to do.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
One for another was able to provide care, and now he's an electrician living his life. What an incredible story.
Yeah, now not all stories are like, health and well-being is a complicated thing. Even here, if you're going through a difficult health situation, anything can happen. But we try to, I try as best I can to focus on all the successes and the things that work out well, and then try to improve on the things that don't. Learn from them.
Hey there, quick pause, and we'll get right back to the show. In January, we launched a program called Unblock Yourself, and it was for people who wanted to build or create something in the world but hadn't done it yet. Since then, we've run 3 groups, and Unblockers have launched businesses, changed careers, and started community initiatives. If I'm honest, we wanted it to be good, but it's been even more powerful than we imagined it could be. Our final group of the year kicks off on October 2nd, and it's going to help another group of people get into action and bring their ideas to life. If anything I've said in this scares or excites you, it might be just what you've been looking for. Learn more at viennawaits.com/unblockyourself or email us at unblockyourself@vienna-waits.com. All right, let's get back to the show. If we could come back a little bit, Glenn, to some of those challenges you might have faced, because the work itself, once you get into it, would be so motivating. I think both of us just sitting here, I think there's going to be so much for us to decompress on after the conversation, just with the stories and the impact the organization has. But staying motivated and staying moving in providing these services would have required overcoming all kinds of obstacles. You alluded to some of them before. Uganda is a complicated place. You're living, you
Mm-hmm.
know, on the other side of the ocean right now, so you must have people running the program. You're here, they're there. What are some of those challenges that you've had to navigate to get the
Mm-hmm.
organization to be sustainable, to have people being served, over 3,000 children that you've served over the years, and we're talking to you now, and we're all here in Ontario. What are some of those challenges that you've overcome?
Yeah, like, so many things could have gone wrong, or so many things have over the years gone wrong. But I would I would say for us, we were fortunate in several areas, but one for sure is having the nurse who we originally hired to navigate the health system and take on the child and coordinate the surgeries. If it wasn't for her, uh, the organization would not have gone anywhere, for sure. Her name's Olivia. She's our director to this day, and she just graduated nursing school at the time. And I asked a friend of mine, Abdu, uh, who I was just doing some little project with, said, "Do you know any nurses? Because we've had these parents bring some kids to us, and Wendy and I would like to keep trying to do that when we go home." So he said, "Well, my sister-in-law just graduated nursing school, and she doesn't have a job, so she would be happy to do it as a volunteer." Remember, we didn't have money, so it's not like we really had a job per se. We had a volunteer position open, and so she did it with no hope of a salary or no hope of a job. We weren't a bona fide organization by any stretch, for like 3 or 4 months without any pay. And it was that got us off the ground. And then it's been her reliability and trustworthiness and her dedication to the work that has given us the chance to be successful. because lots of people will say you can't run an organization from here over there.
Mm-hmm.
Our experience is that with the right people there, it can definitely work. In fact, sometimes when I go, I feel like I get in the way, and I do get in the way of them getting their work done. Like that, the Uganda side programming is my favorite by a long shot. Um, I I get frustrated and angry more in Uganda than I do here, but I'm also I'm filled with so much um, satisfaction and purpose, and the relief even of getting something done there is immense.
Yeah. I think I'm still so fascinated with you going to Africa when you're in university and then going through this big life event and, you know, getting divorced and all of that, and something drawing you back there to find yourself. Like there's something so magically beautiful about that. What was pulling you to Africa? And I don't even know if you can answer that, but it's just, it's fascinating that you had that intense pull.
Yeah, I'd never had an experience like it before in my life. I'm not a person who is forever feeling like God's light is shining down upon me. In fact, that might be the one time where I did feel that, but it it was something I had to return to because of this it gripped me. Um, but I think there's also the element of I'm someone who needs purpose in a fairly deep way. So when I joined the sheer joy of the place and the life giving nature of the place and that love for the place and love in the interaction with the people, together with the need, then I kind of, although I'm not gifted in so many areas of the organization, I am, I do have at least the gift of holding a whole bunch of stuff together, um, and sort of making it work together with the needs. So those two things, when they join and there's overlap, then that sort of is, um, it's bringing your gift or your love together with the needs of the world, and wherever that is, that's where you sort of belong. That was the way it was for me with Uganda.
Ah, so good. I just, I'm going to need to decompress after this for sure. It's just, yeah, beautiful.
We wanted to have this conversation with you, Glenn, because the thing that we're after in a lot of these conversations is people might feel drawn or pulled to something, but then they don't. Maybe they can't. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they don't feel that divine light shining down. They don't feel that sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. And so, if you're to kind of summarize, if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, Glenn, I'm feeling that sense of being stuck, or I'm feeling this draw to do something," what advice might you give somebody?
I don't know that I would be very good at helping someone find their passion or find their purpose, but I would have a few things to say about anybody who has any inkling. I would say that that little thing over there that you are willing to do in your free time for free, that is not really work. It may be work, but it fills you in a way that your regular life doesn't. I would say that's something not to lose sight of. The exact thing itself is going to change a bit. Like I didn't like I started going in this direction and it shifted here and then it kind of went over here, and I'm not even a doctor and yet we're running a medical program, so it tells you that if you start by saying, okay, well, you're clearly good at this and you love this and you're qualified for this, therefore you should do this. Well, it's not exactly like that. You head in the direction of what you're pulled to, and then the next step will kind of show itself, and then you follow that trajectory. And at each stage, you make the best decision you can with where it's taking you. But the bigger thing I think would be to say that when you face hardship or discouragement, that's where most people would end, or a lot of things end. You have to have a way of dealing with discouragement and skepticism of what you're trying to do, because those are powerful forces that'll just knock you right off your momentum and your trajectory. And like I have the blessing of being pulled by the work, like even if I'm not feeling like it, I'm pulled because there's like a specific need that I'm trying to fill, and if I don't, then a lot of people are involved, like not just me and not just the kids and their parents. But so I don't know, it's like once it gets moving, then you can't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this quote that I just thought of. I had to look it up here, but it's if you can't figure out your purpose, figure
Mm.
out your passion. For your passion will lead you right into your purpose. There's something that resonates with that, with this conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but the critics or the discouragement or things not going the way you want, like that's just life. How do you handle that in life? I can't say I always handle it particularly well either, but you have to get up and the next day and you'll feel different about it tomorrow than you do today. Take another step, and then things happen again, and you get the current of positivity and that energy back, and you go again.
Oh, Glenn, I feel like we could keep this going forever. I just am enjoying this so much. But one thing, Glenn, we do ask just all of our podcast guests, is there a book or maybe a podcast or something you might recommend to people that's been impactful for you?
I was thinking about this, and I read depressive poets, so
Love it.
not really. I don't. I'm not like a motivational speaker, or like John Neufeld, who's you had on here, and he's a dear friend. But I'm the opposite of him. But we still both can lead organizations, and mine obviously much smaller than where he was with House of Friendship. But I'm not a type A. How to hear the 7 steps to personal success and freedom. I'm also just, I like poetry, and I like working with wood.
That is great. I love that.
We will take it. But would there be, and maybe this is it, because we had a guest on recently, Jennifer Moss, who shared the one of the greatest ways to build empathy in the world is to read fiction, and the other is travel. And you certainly have done the travel. You've certainly built a tremendous amount of empathy.
Mm.
So maybe that poetry would be helpful to anyone who listens to this, and to us included. So is there any poetry you might recommend?
Well, anything written by Wendell Berry, I love. Frederick Buechner is a novelist and former pastor, spiritual kind of writer, but very, very adept writer on the human condition.
Love that, Glenn.
I think it's a great place to start. And I'm so glad that John just reached out and suggested that we connect and reconnect. We discovered that we met a long time ago, actually, and it's been wonderful to reconnect with you. There's so much that stands out from this conversation, but just one of the things that you talked about, this pull to Africa as a place that's hard to forget,
Hmm.
and there's the people, and then the need there, but also then you just the timing, the way it might hit you when you visit or when you hear about it. And it'd be our hope that somebody listens to this and says, the timing's right for me to learn more about One for Another, or about what the needs are. So before we close off, Glenn, just what is the best way for people to learn more about the work that you're doing, support the work that you're doing, and again, the thousands of lives that you've changed, not just the kids, but their families and the families that will come after them? What's the best way for people to learn more and stay in touch and support your work?
Yeah, the best way would be, first you can visit our website just to see the work, or our social media on Facebook or Instagram. Then emailing me works well, and then we can even talk on the phone. We're small, so I'm available to talk with anybody who's interested in Africa or Uganda or healthcare in Africa. I love it.
And John would have all kinds of fancy answers to that question of social media handles and all the things. We know John would, but appreciate that, Glenn. It says a lot about you and the organization. This is a bit unconventional because we usually close with that as a question, but there's a question that's hanging that if you could answer just for us, which is the meaning behind the name One for Another. And I think that'd be a great way to kind of close this out.
Yeah, I remember when we were just getting going, and you had talked, Whitney, of like, how do you get an organization going? Because there's lots of things involved. And one of the things that took a while was actually a name. But we went through all kinds of names and even circulated them with our friends and stuff like that. And one of them that was in there was One for Another. The origin, for me anyways, has always been a reciprocal relationship between us as, say, supposedly the helper, and then the people in Uganda supposedly being the ones being helped. But in my case, it was very clearly a situation where I was being helped, or there was a benefit to me that was equal to, if not greater than, the benefit to anybody in Uganda. So the idea of one for another, it doesn't matter who's giving and who's receiving. It's that there is a beauty, and there is health and well-being when there's a reciprocity, and it's not a one-way street. And even the concept of helping is complicated, right? So the more that there is a sense of reciprocity, meaning I can at least acknowledge and know how I benefit from this, so that it's not just a hierarchy of givers and receivers, but the Ugandan people uh, have have been such a blessing in my life, and I talk to them every day. I am engaged with them all the time, so I love them, and the joy and the humor that comes out of our interactions is all part of that. Like, every day I'm laughing. People say you go to China or something and you come back wise like Confucius, or you go to Latin America, you come back as a activist, but you go to Africa and you come back laughing. And I think that's been my experience. It's hard not to be infected with the laughter of the place amidst such deprivation and need.
I'm so glad I asked. Thank you for sharing that, Glenn. That I was feeling very impacted by that answer. I think that there's so much beauty in just the name and how it represents what you're all about. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Glenn, this has been such a special conversation that we won't forget. We definitely won't. And we hope our listeners won't either. So thank you for everything you're doing, all the work that you're doing. And thanks for chatting with us today.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for having me and wanting to chat. It's fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
It is fun. Thank you for listening to the Unblock Yourself podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow and rate the podcast. Your ratings and feedback mean the world to us. We'd love to stay connected with you via our bi-weekly newsletter called the Vienna 5, where we share ideas and advice that we found helpful on our own journey to live with more intention. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram. For those Gen Z listeners out there, no, we're not on TikTok. But if enough of you ask for it, we'll just have to do it at some point. The links to find us on social are in the show notes. The Unblock Yourself podcast is edited and produced by Bespoke Productions Hub. Thank you for being here.